Alright, it's time to talk about the Bulwark class and his best build setup for Siege mode in patch 8.0 of Space Marine 2. Now, the Bulwark is an incredible support class, mainly because he can give armor to your whole team, help them out their contested health recovery, do things like heal everybody, has pretty decent horde control, things like Purity of Purpose, is incredibly tanky with things like his starting 30% HP bonus, and perks like Steel Within, Conviction, and Scramble targeting. And really, the only thing this guy is lacking is proper triple boss damage, and even boss damage in general, because it's kind of hard for him to get in on things like a triple Hellbrute or triple Carnifex, because most of the Bulwark damage comes from melee, and it is just really, really hard to get in on melee versus those terrifying encounters. But again, this is a team game. He is not perfect at everything, but he is really good at keeping your main boss damage dealers like your heavy or tactical alive, and he fits his niche pretty perfectly. Now, for the build setup I want to show here today, I will be using the Power Sword with the fencing variant. I know a lot of people like the fencing weapons in this game. It is by far the most popular option, so I figured I'd showcase a fencing variant of this build. And really, I think the Power Sword is not only the best fencing weapon, but also the best Power Sword variant is utilizing the fencing defense option. Now, the perk tree setup we have here is utilizing Armored Strength first. If you have armor remaining, melee damage increases by 10%. It is really easy to keep up your armor on the Bulwark class, mainly because he has all these armor recovery perks that we'll go into shortly, and really he just has a ton of damage mitigation in general. And this also takes us into Master of Offense, which is after switching sword combat style, you deal 20% more melee damage for 5 seconds. Cooldown is 10 seconds. This is a pretty strong melee buff, and it's pretty easy to pull off. It's unfortunate that the cooldown is 10 seconds, but overall, 20% for 5 seconds is like 2 Power Rakes, and Power Rake is the strongest attack on the Power Sword, and this is very easy to pull off with our combat style change, especially when you do like a little dodge change, which I will show at some point, like a different video, or maybe I'll link it up here. Now, the next perk we take here, Perpetual Strength, pretty simple. Melee damage increases by 5%. Then we take it again here. We go into Tranquility, which is while in Power Whirl stance, you do not lose control upon taking heavy hits, and you cannot be knocked back. This is kind of redundant with our Armored Advanced perk here, the signature one, but, you know, we kind of have to take this perk just to go down this perk tree. Here we take Melee Onslaught, 10% more melee damage, you know, pretty self-explanatory. Damage is damage, damage is good. And then we also take what I think is a kind of underrated perk, Hard Target. While performing a light combo, you take 15% less range damage. This is actually really good on the Power Sword, especially because this is one of the only weapons you properly light spam with, and all the other ones are mainly like heavy spam attacks like the Thunder Hammer, Power Fist, and even the Chain Sword at times, and this one is just really good for a speed style Power Sword build. And then next we go into Cutting Edge. Power Rake deals 50% more melee damage. Power Rake is our strongest ability on the Power Sword. It deals the most damage. It can go through multiple enemies. It did recently get buffed in like the last month or two, and overall it's a very powerful option. I think this is kind of like a mandatory perk, because the perk up here, Reeling Blow, enemies hit by Power Rake deal 40% less damage for 8 seconds, and the cooldown is 15 seconds. It's just significantly worse. We lose out on damage, and killing the enemy is far better than like a cooldown based mitigation of damage that only lasts for like 8 seconds. Now, next we take Extremis Slayer here. This is just 15% increased Extremis damage. Pretty self-explanatory. And then I go up into Majora's Slayer, and then I go up here again into the Terminus Slayer, just because we do not need Minora's Slayer, because this does not hit any proper breakpoints. And really, the Power Sword is good on its own at killing Minora's enemies. And really, in the Siege mode especially, Minora's enemies on like the Tyranids, they just die all the time because there are just so many warriors and so many Extremis Synapse bursts, and I just don't think this is necessary whatsoever. Now, next I take Power Restoration. Power style attacks restore 100% more contested health. If you don't want to take this, you can take the speed style one. Either way, I just take these because that's our final perk. And the perk here for Fencing Blade, upping our combo from 4 to 5, is kind of pointless. I have never even gotten off like a 5-strike combo, because usually you're going to be interrupted by something by that point. Pretty terrible perk. And Kill Streak just gives us no knockback, and that's redundant with our Armored Advanced perk. Now, as far as our plasma pistol setup goes here, the reason we take plasma pistol into siege mode is because the gun strikes on this weapon are very, very powerful, and there are just so many damn enemies in siege mode that the AoE of the gun strikes is super, super beneficial. It actually does a tremendous amount of damage, even to bosses at times, so I pretty much always take plasma. If you want to take heavy bolt pistol, you certainly can. I think this is the second best option. I would set it up like this, and I think the Neo-Volkite and bolt pistol especially have kind of fallen off in this game. They could use a buff. Hopefully they get one in the official patch release, but that's my opinion on these two weapons for now. And as far as the plasma pistol setup goes here, I would say just take ammo efficiency. Ammo efficiency, always important, especially on a class like this, where this is our only ranged option, and having no ammo on your only ranged option kind of sucks. Granted, in siege mode, it is easier to get back your ammunition than it is in operations, but still, I just go this way because the other options, they just don't benefit us that much. I just take the ammo capacity variant. And as far as our perk tree is concerned, I have decided to take Intimidating Aura here. A perfectly timed parry deals area of effect damage within a 5-meter radius. Cooldown is 5 seconds. This perk allows us to one-tap combo parry gunstrike any Majoris in the game and deal significant extremis damage. It has been changed a bit over time. Now it no longer functions on bosses, and it does function on perfect block as well as perfect parry, even though the text here does not say that. Hopefully they update that in the official patch 8 release, because we are recording this on the PTS server, but 9 times out of 10, the official patch 8 and the PTS final rendition is exactly the same. Now, Conviction, when your armor is fully depleted, you take 25% less health damage for 10 seconds, is another option if you want to take that over this, but overall, I think this perk is just far more valuable. Same thing here with Scramble Targeting. If you are surrounded by 5 or more enemies, you take 25% less damage from range attacks. Being surrounded by 5 enemies is pretty much constant in siege mode because there are just so many damn guys, and 25% less range damage is super chunky, especially if you stack it with a heavies team perk here for Encompassing Aegis. This is really, really beneficial for us overall, and the Bulwark will benefit from that more than most classes because of its 30% starting HP. Next perk here some people talk about is Armor of Contempt. This perk is pretty awful. I've never gotten a super high benefit out of this, mainly because my Norris enemies are like the only ones that properly die from this. It is better in siege mode than it is in operations because hordes are not on an actual cooldown in siege mode, so like time spent blocking with your shield isn't a big detriment like it is in the operations mode, but overall Armor of Contempt is still pretty mediocre. You can take it if you want. I just value this perk a lot higher. Also, Steel Within here, when your health is less than 50%, you take 30% less health damage. This perk is incredible. 30% less health damage is super chunky. That will stack with our Scramble Targeting here, and even Conviction if you did decide to take this. And because our starting HP is increased by 30%, the way Space Marine 2 works is that like every 25% HP loss, you get a buff of damage reduction. So our effective HP on a Bulwark, because of our increased starting HP, is that much higher than everybody else's, and it makes this, like in a Steel Within perk here, will make your effective HP tremendous. So like even if you're at like 10% HP, you can just survive insane things in this game. It's a super valuable perk. I would take Armor Reinforcement over this if I were, because I'm using a fencing weapon here, if it weren't for the fact that the current rendition of Horde mode forces you to fight both Chaos and Tyranids every 5 waves, and Steel Within just functions better because Chaos does not feed you gun strikes like the Tyranids do. Next perk I have here is Advanced Conditioning. Contested health fades 50% more slowly for all squad members. This perk is pretty classic. You can always take this. A really good perk. Just makes it easier to get CHP back. Pretty self-explanatory. Though I do like to take Focus Restoration now. They buff this perk to work every 30 seconds. Maybe they'll even go down further to like 25 at some point. But really, this perk is quite strong at the moment. All squad members automatically restore 1 armor segment during like every 30 seconds here. And 1 armor might not sound like a lot, but it comes out to like hundreds of armor potentially in like really long siege mode games. And also just the way the siege mode perks work, or I should say the melee enemies in this game work, is that if you take any melee damage in Space Marine 2, you will take 0 health damage as long as you have any armor remaining, including bosses. So Focus Restoration, super good at helping your teammates survive and come in very clutch for people at times. I really think this perk is quite underrated at the moment. Next perk here is Purity of Purpose. The banner deals damage over time to enemies within its area of effect, and this perk is just a shock grenade on your banner. I value this very highly. I think it is far better than rapid regeneration because losing out on banner time sucks, because really armor is better as a drip fed mechanic than it is like a super fast regen. For the most part, sometimes you could benefit from like a faster speed, but losing out on duration, it kind of sucks. Really, I think this should just say the banner restores armor 300% faster, because that's still a choice between these two. Like, that's how you make them equal, in my opinion, but I digress. Point is, Purity of Purpose is amazing. This perk here, Focus Strength, sucks, so don't even worry about it. And the next perk in this tree is the classic Invigorating Icon. When the banner is activated, all squad members regain maximum contested health, where recharges 50% slower. So the 50% increased cooldown here does suck ass, but overall, this is pretty much just infinite stims in your game for as long as you're going on, especially when you stack it with Masterful Defense. Ability charge is restored by 1% for every blocked range attack. This is super good, and since we're taking Invigorating Icon, this is just endless stims for us, and if you block like a Soul Cannon or something, you're gonna get your stuff back so fast and just spam out these banners. I will say, Invigorating Icon can be kind of unfun at times because you don't get to put down as many banners. So if you don't like this, you can take a Glorious Shield here, which I do prefer, but overall, Invigorating Icon is the best perk in this tree. Next perk I would take here is Merciless Resolve. After a Shield Bash or Thunderhammer Pommel Smash, melee damage increases by a little chunky 15%. You do not lose control upon taking heavy hits, and you cannot be knocked back for 10 seconds. This perk is very good because Shield Bash is very easy to pull off, though I will say that the 10-second duration of this will not reset on another instance of Shield Bash. You have to wait for the full 10 seconds to end, and then you can reapply it. So if you don't like that, you don't have to take this, but overall, it's a very strong perk. I should also mention that Rejuvenating Effect, unlike Operations, is very good in Siege mode, because there are times where you are unable to get back an incapacitated squad member because there are simply too many enemies in the area to revive them. Like, sometimes you get like 4 lictors on you. It's insane. So Rejuvenating Effect, pretty good in this mode. Much, much better than it is in Operations. Signature perk I take is Armored Advance. If you have armor remaining, you do not lose control upon taking heavy hits, and you cannot be knocked back. This is just no knockback, and no knockback in this game is OP. I pretty much always take this. You can also take Emergency Countermeasures. This is also very good. And then, but at that point, you're kind of dependent on a perk like this for knockback resist, so I just take this instead. As far as our prestige perks go, I take Auxiliary Reload. Melee kills of Extremis level or higher enemies restore your secondary weapons ammo by 1 magazine. This is a very easy way to basically have infinite ammo. I do still take the ammo variant of the Plasma Pistol, like I said previously, because there are times where, especially in the early game, that this will not benefit you, or I should say Auxiliary Reload is not proccing as often because there's just fewer Extremis, but overall, this scales up and up as the game gets more difficult. You can take Resilience here if you want, but since we're taking Invigorating Icon, we really don't have to. Overcharge, charged attack damage increases by 20%. This perk does function with the Power Sword's Power Rake. Pretty much anything you hold your button down for on a melee weapon, this will count for, so Overcharge is pretty excellent. I always take this. Same thing with Powerful Shot. More range damage, 20% is super beefy, and then we take Masterful Defense because this perk's OP. Now, Standard Bearer, this perk sucks. Like 2 seconds of invulnerability on your banner. It sounds good until you realize that like your banner is pretty much already super safe, and you have to pretty much be in a nightmare scenario for this to ever work in like any decent way. And you are not putting down banners remotely as fast as, say, like a sniper is cloaking himself as something like where is it? The Emperor's Grace here, because this one procs all the time. The Bulwark's banner is only up occasionally, especially if we're using something like Invigorating Icon where we're holding it. And the perk down here, Emboldened Stand, this is just no knockback in your banner. This perk sucks. This perk is so bad. I don't know what the fuck they're thinking with this perk, to be honest. No knockback in a banner. Like, getting knocked back in a banner just like does not matter that often because you have so much armor regen already. And most classes in this game already have a tremendous amount of knockback resist, so this perk is pretty ass. So overall, for this build, I would take Auxiliary Reload, Overcharge, Powerful Shot, and Masterful Defense. I think that's a meta setup. If you are not taking Invigorating Icon, if you want to use something different like Glorious Shield, I would then take Resilience instead of something like Masterful Defense, because Masterful Defense isn't as, well, you know, actually I might swap it out for Overcharge, because this perk just lets you spam banners. Pretty meta. Anyways, that's all for perks here. As far as the Bulwark is concerned for like alternative weapon options, the Thunder Hammer sucks in Siege mode because you'll pretty much just die to Chaos. Like, this weapon is just not good versus Chaos, period. It is currently the weakest weapon in the game for melee. It's kind of unfortunate because the Thunder Hammer is really fun. If you want to use it, you can. I just wouldn't really recommend it unless it lets you pick between Chaos and Tyranids in the official patch. As far as Power Fist is concerned, Power Fist is very strong, especially the balanced one, because the balanced one still hits all breakpoints on things like Rubric Marines, even for the... Actually, I'm not sure if that's true for the Bulwark, but I know it's true for the Assault class. But overall, the Power Fist, especially the Relic block Power Fist, or excuse me, the Artificer block with its 13 strength and adrenaline charges, can do severe damage to enemies. And if you really want to swap into what I think is like a meta build setup for this, I would just take the Artificer block Chainsword, like I believe I mentioned previously, or the Relic Chainsword here for block. And those are probably the best options. You want to take the fencing version, you can, but overall fencing is just better on the Power Sword. Anyways, guys, that is the best build setup, in my opinion, for the Bulwark class on Siege mode. He does have quite a few options. He is very strong. I will say some of his perks need a pretty significant buff, like Focus Strength and Effective Formation, but overall, he is very good for Siege mode. He's a great support. He may struggle versus boss damage and lacks like serious burst damage, but he is damn strong, and hopefully this build guide helped you. Peace.